So as I introduced myself earlier, my name is Sherry Xie. I'm currently a bioinformatician. And today I'll be giving a quick introduction to Python and some basic Python concepts. So hopefully for those of you who have some Python experience already, a lot of this will be review. But if you don't have Python experience, hopefully this will help you kind of have a starting point. So what is Python exactly? It's a popular and versatile programming language, and it has a large user base, as well as many well-documented libraries, which are basically collections of pre-written code that are designed to complete some task or centered around a theme. And because of its large user base and the large number of libraries that Python has, it's also particularly useful in the data science and machine learning fields, which is why we're using Python in this course. Before you can use Python, you do have to install Python. You can actually check if Python is already installed by going into your terminal and typing these two commands, python -- version or python 3 -- version. You'll see that I have two versions of Python, Python 2.7.16 and Python 3.9.6. This is because on Mac OS systems, Python 2 is generally pre-installed. The specific version will actually depend on your Mac OS version. But Python 3 is highly recommended for most practical programming purposes, including for this course. And you will probably need to download it regardless of your operating system if you don't already have Python 3. So in order to download Python 3, you can go to the official Python site. If you just Google a Python download, I think this should be the top result. And the site should be able to automatically detect the latest version of Python that's available for your operating system. And all you have to do is just click the download button and it should download the installer. To access the installer, you'll probably need to navigate to your system downloads folder, wherever that may be. Double click the Python installer and just follow through the process. If you are on a Windows system, you should make sure that you select this add Python 3 point whatever to path option. Without going into too many details, this is just going to make your life a lot easier in the future. And finally, you want to check that you've successfully installed Python 3 by running this Python 3 version command again in your terminal. And if you're paying attention, you'll see that I actually did download Python 3, this 3.10.9 version. So now my terminal shows the new updated version when I run this command. In addition to actually having Python itself, you will need some type of text editor. These are necessary for actually editing code and building programs. The basic functionality of a text editor, as its name suggests, is just the ability to create and modify text documents. So on Mac operating systems, you usually have TextEdit, which is a user interface, so you can open it as an application and type your text into it. There's also Vim and Nano, which some of you may have used before, but these are terminal-based text editors. On Windows systems, you have Notepad, which, similar to TextEdit, is also just a user interface-based text editor. However, you probably want to be able to do some more complicated things than what you can do with a basic text editor like the ones I just introduced, and that's where these integrated development environments, or IDEs, come in. And IDEs are made specifically for writing code. They usually will include some sort of built-in debugger or quote-unquote spell check to help you identify errors specific to your code. They include tools for helping you to directly run your code. And they can also integrate with a lot of other applications for collaboration or automation or other purposes that you may need as you get more advanced in coding. Most of my examples throughout the rest of this lecture are going to be in Visual Studio Code. This is a pretty popular IDE that many people in the Maya Lab use. If you choose not to use Visual Studio Code, there are also a couple other options. PyCharm is another IDE. It's specifically for Python. There's also Sublime Text, Eclipse, IntelliJ, and plenty of other options available. Depending on your text editor, you may need to activate some kind of support for Python. For instance, in Visual Studio Code, you will probably need to install the Microsoft Python extension. So if you open the Visual Studio Code app and you navigate to the Extensions tab, which should be on the left of your window when you open it, it's the little Tetris-looking icon. And then you can just search for Python, and you'll want the one that's the verified Microsoft Python extension. And this will just make it a lot easier to code in Python and give you a couple language-specific features. Depending on what editor you're using, if you're not using Visual Studio Code, Python support might already be built in, or you might need to look into how to actually get that for your editor. Okay, so once you have Visual Studio Code actually downloaded and Python downloaded and you're ready to actually start coding, you can open your text editor and create a new text file. And here I'm showing how you can do that in Visual Studio Code by opening just a new window and then clicking File, New Text File, and you should see something similar to what is on the right on the screen. You can type the following text directly into the document, type it exactly as written. So it's just print, open parentheses, quote mark, hello world, close parentheses, and then that's it. You then want to save your file as a Python file. So you can do this by naming the file with the .py extension, which tells your system that this is a Python file. You can also select Python as the file type if that's an option that's available to you. So here I'm just saving my file as just hello.py in this folder first program. Most IDEs, as I mentioned earlier, likely contain some language-specific features that make it a little easier to read and work with than a basic text editor like TextEdit or Notepad. So you'll see here that once I've saved this file as a Python file, different aspects of the code are actually now color-coded. You can also hover over this specific print function, and you can see that there's a little box that kind of pops up and gives you all the documentation for what you're hovering over. That is also a result of having the Python extension for Visual Studio Code. So if you don't see a change after you do this in Visual Studio Code or maybe another editor, you should make sure that you have some sort of Python support enabled in your editor. Okay, so then once you have your program written, you obviously want to actually run the program. So the first option, and maybe the easiest option, is to just use the built-in run command. This is available in Visual Studio Code. It's the little play button that I've kind of highlighted in blue on the left there. If you hover over it, it'll say run Python file, and it'll actually pull up this little miniature terminal in your window, and you'll see that it runs the program and it prints hello world into your terminal. Most text editors should also have some sort of similar run command, and this is probably just the first and simplest option for running your code. The second option is that you can just open a terminal. So you can open a system terminal, as Giacomo showed earlier, or you can also open a terminal within the editor occasionally. So here I'm showing how to open a new terminal within your VS Code window, and you'll see it pops up on the bottom there. And if you choose this option, you can use the handy dandy Linux commands you learned earlier and navigate to the directory where you just saved your program. So here I'm just using the cd command and then the ls command to kind of show that I have this hello.py file in this first program folder. And then in order to run the file, you can type in Python3 and then the name of your file, and it'll run that file. And you'll see that it does print hello world if the Python file was successfully run. One other option, if you're already experienced with Python, or if you're looking for a different kind of more interactive experience, VS Code specifically does offer this interactive Python option. So this allows you to work with code cells, which are just smaller blocks of code that you can edit, run, and debug. It does require this Jupyter package, which I think we'll cover in a future lecture. But if you're already familiar with Jupyter or interactive Python, this is also an option for actually writing code. And I've linked some instructions on the slides here. I think you can also just look up Python interactive window in the VS Code website. So to kind of go over everything we just talked about, I kind of explained why Python is a versatile, popular programming language. There's a lot of users, and it's very useful in machine learning and data science. You need text editors in order to write Python programs, and specifically specialized code editors or IDEs make it easy to run and debug your code in Python. I've also linked some more resources here. So the Python website itself has a lot of resources. There's a Python for Beginners page. There's also a Python Beginner's Guide that links to several different external tutorials that I guess are kind of approved by the Python team themselves. They also have their own Python tutorial, which is probably for more advanced Python users or people who already have background. There are also some other external tutorials, like learnpython.org is a popular one. It's an interactive Python tutorial, so you can actually run the code as you learn it on the site. And of course, you can always look for other Python courses externally if you're really interested in diving into Python. I know there's a couple on Coursera and maybe also on other websites as well.